Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and Nancy Mace absolutely sounds off on this former Biden I.C.E. official who doesn't fully understand just how bad things are in sanctuary cities and with illegal immigration. Let's dive in.
Question. Do you support President Trump's policy to designate cartels as terrorist organizations?
I think that by designating...
It's a yes or no. Do you support President Trump's policy to designate cartels
I support focusing on national security.
Do you support President Trump's policy to designate cartels as terrorist organizations?
I think it is important
yes or
to
no?
focus on national security.
Okay. Should illegals who are here illegally, who rape American women and girls, should they be deported? Yes or no?
Individuals with serious criminal convictions such as that are deported every single day.
Oh, no, they're not. What about murderers? Do you think murderers should be deported?
Murders are also subject to deportation.
Okay, so there is a sanctuary sheriff named Kristen Graziano in Charleston County, South Carolina, who refused to work with ICE, and she was letting criminal illegals out on the street who were raping my constituents, raping women in Charleston, in South Carolina, pedophiles, child molesters, murderers out onto the streets of South Carolina. This is happening in Bright Red, South Carolina, the sanctuary sheriff. So they aren't being deported because there are sanctuary mayors. You want to quote Mayor Wu as being this gift from God about safety. I mean, she was literally like praising or sending her condolences to a knife-wielding maniac trying to murder people on the streets of Boston. It's crazy to me. And here you have a law degree. You have done advised on immigration to ICE, and you can't even say whether or not you want the cartels to be designated as terrorist organizations. You're hiding behind some little lofty quote about national security, which is not really making a whole lot of sense. One of the things I did want to fact check some of my colleagues on today is this idea, which has been said by multiple people online in this hearing today, that it's not illegal to come here illegally. Well, under Title 8, it actually is. Title 8 USC 1325 about the improper entry of an alien. It is breaking the law when you enter here illegally. And our witness, Ms. Doyle, cited in her opening presentation the 10th Amendment, that it gives absolute control to states and cities and counties to handle the immigration issue. It actually doesn't, and I'm shocked as an attorney that you don't know the law because it says under the law in multiple places, especially in long-standing Supreme Court precedent. But the 10th Amendment says the power is not delegated to the federal government or reserved for the states. Congress' power to regulate immigration primarily stems from Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4. And that is the power to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. And under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, power to regulate commerce with foreign nations. I'm not even an attorney, and I could easily look that up. I think we need to have higher standards for those who are lawyers and also practicing law and teaching law to our students, because there's a long-standing Supreme Court precedent also that's recognized Congress as having plenary power over immigration and not actually the states. And plenary means absolute control. So last year, I exposed a sanctuary sheriff who was doing day after day after day, months after months. I exposed her for releasing the worst of the worst, the most violent, those illegals that were committing the worst possible crimes. I fought to get rid of this sanctuary sheriff, Kristen Graziano, when I had documents sent to me by a whistleblower, and I ended up talking to multiple sources about this. I was one of the only elected officials that called out our sanctuary sheriff in South Carolina, Kristen Graziano. No one in statewide elected office, not my Attorney General Alan Wilson, not my Lieutenant Governor Pam Yvette, if you're listening and you're watching, you stood by silent as a sanctuary sheriff let out murderers, let out rapists, let out child molesters and pedophiles out onto the streets of South Carolina. It was wrong, it was unethical, it was illegal. I had 145 Democrats vote against my bill, the Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act. 145 Democrats voted against deporting those who are here illegally, the worst of the worst, murderers, rapists, pedophiles. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was not ready for that last left turn there. 145 Democrats refused to vote yes on a bill that says, hey, let's deport the most violent of the violent illegal migrants. Surely we can find some common ground there. So apparently we only got about, 60 some odd Democrats to come on board at the most? That's insane. That's just insane to me. That is a basic common sense approach, and that is exactly what happened in Nancy Mace's bill. She had her own version of the Violence Against Women Act, an extension of that act, and instead of saying, hey, we support women, the Democrats had 145 of their congressional members bury their heads straight into the sand and say no. I'm sorry, that sounds like a good basic bipartisan bill to me. Maybe that's just my bias after being in a couple of state houses for a little while and loving legislative politics like this, but that sounds like a basic bill that everyone can agree on, okay? It's sad to me that we also had to deal with an official who was a part of the Biden administration, who was a part of ICE as a lawyer, basically kind of cross her arms at the beginning and go, I don't agree with what you just said. Or rather, I refuse to agree with what you just said. All Nancy Mace was wanting to know was, did this former official think it's a good idea to list the cartels as a terrorist organization, and instead got this non-answer. Instead of even having the decency to say, hey, I'm not used to this proposition, this is new, I can't really give you an answer because I don't have all the facts with me. I'd accept that, because that shows some form of honesty, but to deflect from that question says that you know where your answer really is, and you don't want that officially on record. That is cowardly, and that is something that the Democrat Party has been bringing to the table in larger and larger amounts ever since Barack Obama won in 2008. That's just insane to me. That's sad. But the worst thing I think from this whole video isn't something at the congressional level. It's not at the federal level. It's technically at the state level, where a local sheriff by the name of Kristen Graziano, who was a Democrat who won a narrow election against a longtime Republican in Charleston, South Carolina, to become the first female sheriff and one of the first openly lesbian sheriffs. Congratulations. I guess that's a win for someone down there. But sorry, I'm a Georgia boy, so I'm a Savannah supremacist. But this lady apparently had such a bad track record that after just 2 years in office, she gets booted out. Now, it was still a close election, which tells me that for some reason, Charleston would rather have someone that lets out violent criminals and making matters worse, violent illegal alien criminals than, actually dealing with the laws at hand and holding on to them for ICE to come and pick them up. Okay? You'd think that a law-abiding sheriff would do that, and that would definitely be the case with the Trump administration. I don't think that would have happened under Biden, and particularly under Alejandro Mayorkas. But thankfully, Tom Homan has come in here to solve part of that problem. But Nancy Mace is bringing up a major issue. And Graziano didn't really have that great of a tenure either. Graziano's tenure saw 17 inmates die in the detention center or in a hospital after being transported from the jail, more than double of the number of deaths that occurred in the 4 years before she became sheriff. Sorry, apparently I said 2 years, I meant 1 term. My apologies. With those deaths has come an ongoing federal investigation into a potential pattern of abuse at the jail. And a Post and Courier analysis found that more than 30 lawsuits have been filed in the state court against Charleston County Sheriff's Office for instances that happened under Graziano's leadership. Oh boy. Okay, that ain't good. Okay, that ain't good. Forget the illegal immigration issue. That means that for some reason, because of the popularity of this woman, because she ticked off a lot of boxes for Democrats and made a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, squishy Republicans feel good about themselves, that they were making history in Charleston, South Carolina. Well, congratulations, you now had someone that was way worse than the previous administration and kept on making even bigger mistakes. I say this all the time, and I earnestly mean this, Democrats can't govern. Okay, there's a handful of places where they do make it work, like Washington State. They might be crazy up there, but for some reason, their businesses work up there. There's still a thriving middle class. It's rare, but the Democrats can do it. But in places like Illinois, North Carolina, you then have parts of the South, like Charleston, South Carolina, that can be a little bit heavier Democrat at times. You get issues like this constantly, and they don't get better. They usually end up making everything a little bit worse because they haven't been in office long enough. They know that something needs to change, but they often don't know what needs to change. Well, the American people knew what needed to change, and that's why a big reason for Donald Trump's election, both in 2016 and again in 2024, was illegal immigration. And this former ICE official doesn't seem to understand what American people actually want to see happen on this front. And to make matters worse, Nancy Mace is hammering home the idea that this is happening in Republican backyards. That's where these battles are being fought constantly. It's not just in blue cities. It's not just in blue states. It's in areas in your own backyard now. That's how widespread the problem has become. And that's why Nancy Mace is at the forefront of this fight. And that's why this former ICE official is just that, a former ICE official. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.